Across the northern edge of the United States, the Great Lakes stretch like a chain of quiet inland seas. Most people see calm shorelines, familiar dunes, and steady waves. But buried inside more than a century of ranger logs, Coast Guard files, lighthouse journals, and missing person reports is a slow pattern that almost no official agency discusses. A pattern made not from dramatic storms or shipwreck legends, but from small, repeating details: vanishing boats found in perfect condition, footprints that stop clean on dry ground, signals that fall silent without warning, and weather that behaves as if obeying rules of its own. People disappear in calm daylight. Lights fall, but never strike the water. Maps disagree with themselves. And decade after decade, the same kinds of cases return, matching earlier ones with quiet precision. This documentary follows those records, one by one, and traces the shape of something that has lasted more than a century inside the Great Lakes Triangle. The shape beneath the waves. The Great Lakes stretch across the northern part of the country like a long band of cold blue metal. From a plane window, they look calm and flat. But the people who work on these waters, Coast Guard crews, rescue swimmers, sheriff departments, and trail rangers, describe something different when they talk off the record. They mention a pattern that repeats in a quiet line across Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Lake Huron. Some call it the Great Lakes Triangle. The name came from a Wisconsin pilot, Kenneth Hopkins, in 1969, after he investigated the disappearance of a small cargo plane over Lake Michigan. In his private notes, he wrote one sentence that stood out: "The lake swallowed it whole." His report was never formally published, but his words drifted through local aviation groups for years. The 3 points of this suspected triangle sit near Whitefish Bay, the open water between Milwaukee and Muskegon, and the edge of Georgian Bay. When researchers place the region's missing person cases, lost vessels, and vanished aircraft on a single map, they tend to fall inside this broad shape. No single case stands out more than others. What makes the pattern unusual is the lack of physical evidence. Debris rarely washes up. Boats vanish on calm days. Hikers walk a familiar shoreline trail and never reach the next point. Search logs remain open for years without closure. One of the earliest and strangest cases occurred in November 1918, when the steamer O.M. McFarland disappeared during a routine journey across Lake Superior. The captain, George White, sent a final message at 3:15 a.m. Weather steady, all normal. The lake was flat, which made the loss more difficult to explain. Search teams expected splintered lumber or floating cargo somewhere along the rocks near Michipicoten Island. They found nothing. The archive file in Thunder Bay contains a handwritten note on the cover: "No recovery." The entire crew, all 29 members, vanished with the ship. The mid-1900s brought similar incidents. On the 23rd of June 1953, pilot Jerome Tefelsky took off from Chicago for a short flight to Beaver Island. Conditions were clear. He sent one message near the midpoint of Lake Michigan, saying, "Strong glare off the water today." Minutes later, the tower asked for his altitude. The reply never came. The Cessna was never located. In 1987, a diver reported seeing something like a wing lodged deep in silt near North Manitou Island, but no follow-up search confirmed it. Another case still discussed by aviation historians is Northwest Orient Flight 2501, which disappeared over Lake Michigan on the 23rd of June 1950, the same date as Tefelsky's disappearance 3 years later. Residents near Benton Harbor witnessed a flash above the lake. The Coast Guard searched the area for days. No large pieces of the plane were ever found. Captain Robert Lind had asked air traffic control for permission to descend from 3,500 to 2,500 feet due to turbulence. The request was denied because of heavy traffic. His final words were calm: "Roger, maintain." The flight carried 8 people. To this day, no major wreckage has surfaced. Not all disappearances involve boats or aircraft. Many occur on land, along the heavily forested shoreline trails that wind through cedar swamps. In July 1999, Raymond Haskins, a 3-4-year-old visitor at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, left the miner's castle overlook for a casual walk. Rangers began searching at 6:40 p.m. when he failed to return. The trail is clear and close to public access. They found only one strong footprint in damp soil and no slide marks along the cliff edge. A ranger later noted that a sudden cold fog moved in at 7 p.m. and muted the usual sound of the lake. Haskins was never found. Strange fog and sudden changes in air pressure appear in dozens of reports. The Great Lakes frequently create seaches, long-standing waves caused by rapid pressure shifts. But rescue crews describe something different inside the triangle. A retired Coast Guard swimmer from Station Street, Ignis, explained in a 2004 interview, the surface sometimes shivers in a line, not up and down, sideways. His name was not included in the transcript, but his description matches several internal notes from field teams working the same waters. None of them suggest a supernatural cause. They describe what they see and record the time. The region's geology may play a hidden role. Lake Superior is more than 1,300 feet deep in some areas. Its uneven floor contains old volcanic rifts and steep shelves. In 1976, University of Minnesota researcher Dr. Elaine Horvath ran seismic equipment near Whitefish Bay. She recorded low-frequency vibrations she labeled subsurface oscillations. In her field log, she wrote, "Pattern aligns in triangular formation, possibly coincidental." The logs remained stored until digitization in 2011, when researchers noticed they matched several documented Seishi events. Lake Michigan's eastern edge has its own anomalies. In 2007, 2 fishermen near Ludington reported a loud inhaling sound beneath their boat on a calm afternoon. One, Daniel Kruger, stated, "The lake pulled in air, then stopped. The boat did not rock. The water remained flat." He filed a statement with the Ludington Coast Guard station, where it joined a folder marked Acoustic Irregularities. Similar statements date back to 1974. None offer an explanation. Older stories from the Ojibwe communities around Lake Superior speak of sudden disappearances on still water. They describe water that opens without a splash. In 1889, ethnographer Walter James Hoffman wrote, "Elders speak of deep water that parts for only a moment." He recorded the stories without adding interpretation. Modern researchers reference these early accounts when discussing pre-modern descriptions of unusual water behavior in this region. Compass drift appears in multiple ranger logs as well. On the 12th of October 1998, a ranger boat near Grand Marais documented a sudden 14-degree shift in compass heading. Ranger Kelly Holstrom wrote that the reading corrected itself after the boat moved 1 mile west. The shift lasted less than 2 minutes. Her report contains no speculation and ends with a simple line. Field note recorded. If you visit Whitefish Point, there is a sign installed in 2016 listing the names of lost ships along that shoreline. At the bottom is a short sentence. The lake does not return what it takes. Most visitors assume it was written for the exhibit. It was spoken in 1972 by Coast Guard Captain Arthur Beck during a brief interview after a rescue boat failed to locate a missing man. Cases continue even today, usually recorded quietly in county logs. A missing kayaker, a stalled fishing boat found empty, a solo hiker who left a trailhead after lunch and never reached the next point. When placed on a map, these incidents add another quiet point inside the same boundary, first drawn more than 50 years ago. The shape does not move, it simply collects new stories. The weather that finds you. The Great Lakes are known for sharp seasonal changes, but inside the region many call the Great Lakes Triangle, the weather behaves in ways that local crews describe as too fast, too quiet, or not tied to any normal pattern. These descriptions appear in search logs, lighthouse journals, and flight tower notes, going back to the early 1900s. From a distance, the report seems small, but when placed together, they show a record of sudden fog banks, quick pressure drops, and storms that form without visible build-up. The shift can happen in under a minute. Pilots, rangers, and fishermen give similar explanations, though most only write the facts and avoid speculation. One of the clearest accounts comes from the 14th of October 1972, recorded at the Whitefish Point Light Station. Keeper Lloyd Harrison noted a rapid haze forming over the lake without cloud cover overhead. He measured a sharp drop in barometric pressure, 3 millibars, in under 50 seconds. Harrison wrote, "Fog rose from the surface as if pulled upward. He watched it spread evenly across the water until the horizon vanished behind a flat grey sheet. No wind accompanied the event. He reported no storm before or after." The note sits in the Lighthouse archive with a penciled tag, "Unusual atmospheric behaviour." The same kind of fog appears in flight tower records at Muskegon County Airport, particularly on the 3rd of June 1989, when a pilot named Mark DeVries reported losing all visual reference over Lake Michigan. His statement reads, "Clear skies on departure. Fog curtain formed in front of the nose. No transition zone." Radar showed the plane moving normally, but DeVries said he could not see his own wingtip for nearly 2 minutes. When the fog cleared, visibility returned instantly without a fade-out. His landing log ends with the sentence, "Event not predicted by forecast." Quote, "Rangers working the shoreline describe similar conditions. At Pictured Rocks, along the cliffs east of Miners Castle, a ranger team recorded a sudden fog intrusion on the 27th of August 2004. The report notes that visibility dropped from 12 miles to less than 40 feet in about 30 seconds. Ranger Alan Sutter wrote, "It moved like a wall, straight line, no sound before arrival. Hikers on the trail said the fog felt warm, even though the air temperature had been falling earlier that evening. When the fog lifted, it did so unevenly, revealing patches of cliff and forest in slow sections." Rangers searched the area after receiving a call about a lost visitor, but no person matching the description was found. Weather scientists studying Lake Superior have long documented a rare event known as a steam fog or Arctic sea smoke, which forms when cold air moves across warmer water. But inside the triangle, the timing does not match these conditions. The fog often rises on warm evenings or on days with equal air and water temperatures. In 2001, a research team led by Dr. Monica Elling placed monitors near Grand Island and detected abrupt humidity spikes that lasted less than 1 minute. In her notes, she called the events localized atmospheric pockets, but she added that she could not match them to wind changes or temperature gradients. Quick pressure drops remain another recurring detail. In April 1996, a fisherman named Robert Dakin recorded a sudden pressure shift on his handheld barometer while trolling off the coast of Ludington. His device dropped 4 millibars in under a minute. Dakin wrote that he looked across the water expecting dark clouds, but the sky was empty. He described the lake surface as glassy and stretched tight. 10 minutes later, the pressure returned to its previous reading. The log now rests in a file labeled Atmospheric Events Unclassified. Similar pressure changes appear in old ship logs. The William B. Davok, a freighter that sank in 1940 near Pentwater, had earlier recorded a pressure drop during a 1938 crossing of Lake Michigan. The log entry from first mate Harold Price reads, "Pressure collapsed and rebounded without passing wind. The crew felt the deck shudder slightly, but no waves hit the hull." 2 years later, the ship was lost with all hands during a storm. The earlier event has since been mentioned in studies of unusual lake behavior leading up to complex weather systems. Storms are another part of the pattern. Fishermen around the Straits of Mackinac talk about flash storms that strike a small area while the surrounding water remains calm. On the 11th of July 2015, a group of kayakers near Street Ignis reported a dark column of rain that appeared directly above them without a cloud bank feeding into it. One kayaker, Seth Mullin, told rangers, "It descended like someone opened a door in the sky." The rain lasted less than 2 minutes. When it ended, the sunlight remained unchanged across the rest of the lake. Rangers logged the event, but did not categorize it under storm activity. Light patterns also show up in accounts. On the 3rd of September 1992, 2 commercial freighter captains, Jim LaRoche of the Saginaw Star and David Norwell of the Huron Bell, reported seeing a vertical glow in the distance near the midpoint between Milwaukee and Muskegon. The glow lasted about 20 seconds before fading. Neither captain heard thunder or saw lightning. Both entered notes in their logs describing the glow as column-like. Meteorologists could not link the event to documented lightning strikes. The US Coast Guard has its own share of unusual weather notes. In 2008, a crew from Station Frankfurt documented a fog bank that moved against the wind. The report states that the wind was blowing from the west, but the fog advanced from the east, cutting across the lake surface at a steady pace. One crew member, Ian Mercer, wrote, "Fog ignored direction of wind. The crew observed the event for roughly 4 minutes before resuming patrol." Across the Great Lakes Triangle, many of these conditions appear without any noise. No thunder, no wind, no build-up in the sky. A lighthouse keeper at O'Sable Point, Ruth Holston, wrote on the 22nd of May 1961, "Fog rose like a sheet pulled upward." She added a short sentence, "Air too still." Her journal contains several similar entries. She marked each with a small circle, as if grouping them for later study. Some researchers believe underwater formations contribute to the strange weather changes. Lake Superior's volcanic rifts and Lake Michigan's deep sediment troughs may shape pressure zones. In 2003, geologist Dr. Andrew Delmont mapped magnetic irregularities near Whitefish Bay and noticed that several intersected directly with areas of repeated fog events. He wrote, "Potential correlation worth monitoring." His team did not return the following season due to funding cuts, leaving the study incomplete. Even today, the lakes produce sudden weather events inside this region. Search teams on both Lake Michigan and Lake Superior continue to record cases where visibility shifts without warning. Fog arrives in a straight line, rain falls in a narrow column, pressure drops occur without wind. None of these events are unexplained in isolation, but when placed together, they form a quiet record of weather that arrives without following the rules usually seen on large inland lakes. The signals that vanish. Radio failures are not unusual in aviation or marine travel, but inside the region now marked as the Great Lakes Triangle, crews report a different kind of silence. It does not follow storms, nor does it depend on distance from the nearest tower. Pilots and captains describe it as a quiet interruption that cuts off one system but leaves others untouched. Logs from air towers, Coast Guard stations, and county search teams note these events in simple sentences. The patterns appear when these notes are placed side by side. One of the earliest documented cases comes from June 1927, when a male pilot named Arthur Goodman reported sudden radio loss while flying from Marquette to Sault Ste. Marie. His entry in the flight log reads, "Signal cut clean, engine normal, compass steady." The radio returned only after he left the open water and crossed over land again. Goodman later added a small notation, "Static not present, silence total." His description matches dozens of later cases, though he had no reason to suspect anything unusual at the time. Ship captains experienced similar interruptions. On the 4th of November 1949, the freighter Adrian M. Ellis reported losing contact with a harbor station while traveling across Lake Michigan. Captain Ernest Dalton wrote, "Signal dropped mid-sentence, loud tone replaced by nothing. He tried switching frequencies, but all channels remained silent." The ship's internal communication system worked fine, and the engine room reported normal operations. The radio returned 12 minutes later without any adjustment from the crew. Dalton's report sits in a Coast Guard archive file marked "Equipment checked, no fault found." Compass irregularities also appear throughout the region. In 1968, a small passenger plane flown by Gordon Hayes experienced a sudden 20-degree drift in heading while crossing the lake near Manitowoc. Hayes wrote in his report, "Compass turned left sharply, without aircraft movement." Air traffic control confirmed that his radar signature showed a straight line the entire time. When Hayes tapped the compass housing, the needle corrected itself. The drift lasted less than a minute. Maintenance crews found no damage, moisture, or magnetic interference inside the unit. Another notable case occurred on the 18th of March, 1994, involving a research vessel named the Horizon Light, which was studying sediment patterns in Lake Huron. Crew members noted that their digital compass began rotating slowly, completing a full circle in 22 seconds. The helm officer, Laura Willis, stated in her log, "Manual compass unaffected, digital compass spinning. When the crew shut down the digital unit, waited and restarted it, the compass returned to normal operation." Willis added, "Atmosphere calm, no storm present." Radio silence has played a part in several disappearances. In May 1978, a private plane piloted by Charles Merriman disappeared over Lake Michigan after sending a brief message that was partially cut off. The tower transcript contains only 3 words, "over the" before the signal ended. No follow-up contact was received. The Coast Guard launched a search at 11:48 p.m., but the plane was never found. Weather was calm, and visibility was clear. Merriman had reported no previous mechanical issues. Investigators noted that the last radar position placed the aircraft inside what is now considered the southwestern corner of the triangle. Another loss occurred on the 7th of July, 1992, when a fishing boat called the Northwind stopped responding to radio calls near Whitefish Bay. The crew had reported routine catch numbers only minutes earlier. After the silence, a nearby vessel approached their last known location and found the boat drifting. The engine was off, the radio was on, and the deck was empty. The Coast Guard report states, "No signs of struggle, no radio malfunction, crew missing." The file contains no follow-up explanation. The most unsettling accounts involve signals that vanish for only a few seconds. On the 2nd of August 2008, the captain of a tour boat near Mackinac Island, Kevin Hart, reported a brief blackout of all communications equipment. The GPS froze, the depth finder blinked out, and the radio cut to static. Passengers later said the boat seemed to hang in still water, though the engine continued to run. After roughly 10 seconds, all systems returned at once. Hart's entry in the log reads, "Equipment restored simultaneously. No vibration, no known cause." Air traffic controllers have also reported strange radio distortions. On the 30th of April 2011, the tower at Traverse City received a garbled message from a small aircraft crossing Lake Michigan. The pilot, Rita Cole, later confirmed that she repeated her message twice, and that both times her radio gauge showed strong signal strength. The tower recorded only a thin, whistling sound. Cole wrote in her statement, "Tower heard nothing. I heard them clearly." She managed to complete her flight without issue, but she added that her magnetic compass felt slow to respond for several minutes after the event. There are several cases where distress signals appear, then fade instantly. On the 19th of December 1983, a short burst from an emergency locator transmitter activated near the center of Lake Superior. The signal lasted 6 seconds before disappearing. Search teams scanned the area for debris or wreckage, but found none. Weather conditions were stable, and no aircraft were reported missing. The Federal Aviation Administration recorded the event under false activation. However, technicians later reviewed the signal signature and wrote, "Activation appears authentic." People on land have reported missing radio signals as well. On the 22nd of October 2014, 2 hikers near Grand Marais attempted to call a ranger station after hearing what they described as a distant metallic echo from the shoreline. Their phone showed full bars, but the call failed 3 times. When they reached higher ground, the call went through without trouble. Rangers recorded the incident as temporary communication gap. The hikers insisted the air felt charged, though no storms were nearby. Even amateur radio operators have logs that match these irregularities. In June 2005, an operator named Henry Talbot from Marquette recorded a sudden dead zone across 3 frequencies while scanning the lake. He wrote, "Signals dropped out as if someone closed a lid. When the connection returned, the first signal he heard was from a station more than 200 miles away, unusually strong for that hour." Talbot suspected atmospheric ducting, but he also noted that the quiet zone lasted exactly 1 minute. Today, the pattern continues, mostly unnoticed by the public. A pilot may lose radio for a few seconds. A fishing crew may hear a burst of static. A compass needle may drift for half a minute. Each event alone looks ordinary, but placed on a map, they fall inside the same shape, first noted more than 50 years ago. The signals vanish quietly, they return quietly, and the logs continue to grow. The lost people who walked into air. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, many disappearances happen on open water, but an equally quiet pattern unfolds along the forests, shorelines, and cliff trails that border Superior, Michigan, and Huron. These are not dramatic cases. Most begin with a short walk, a picnic, a photo stop, or a quick detour down a familiar path. What makes them unusual is the suddenness and the lack of physical trace. Ranger notes, search logs, and county reports often contain the same phrase. Last confirmed location established, no follow-up sign. Oh, one of the earliest recorded cases comes from July 1907 along the southern shore of Lake Superior near O'Train. A school teacher named Martha Rainey was vacationing with relatives when she left their campsite to gather small pieces of driftwood. Her nephew saw her step around a cluster of low pines. When she did not return, her family began calling for her. Assuming she had wandered further down the beach, search efforts began at dusk. The sheriff's report states, "Sand undisturbed. No slide marks, no struggle. The only item found was a single driftwood piece placed upright in the sand, as if set down carefully. No other sign of Rainey was ever located." Another case appears nearly 50 years later. On the 19th of August 1954, a hunter named Peter Wallace disappeared near Newberry, deep inside the Upper Peninsula. Wallace was experienced and known to carry a detailed compass map. When he failed to return by nightfall, local search teams covered a 3-mile radius. They found his boot prints leading down a narrow cedar corridor, then stopping abruptly on dry ground. A state trooper wrote, "Print ends clean, soil firm, no imprint beyond last." The search lasted 6 days. Wallace was never found, and his compass was never recovered. Along Lake Michigan's eastern side, the shoreline trails contain their own missing person stories. In September 1970, at Sleeping Bear Dunes, 2-year-old Donna Hart walked ahead of her friends to take photos of the sunset. Witnesses saw her near a ridge about 300 feet away. When her friends reached the same point, she was gone. The sand showed only her approach prints. Rangers documented the scene carefully. One ranger, Paul Steiner, noted that the wind had been calm all evening. "No drift, no cover," he wrote. Search teams used ropes to check the steep slopes toward the water. They found nothing. A similar disappearance occurred on the 5th of May 1993 near Pukasqua National Park along the northern shore of Lake Superior. A 40-year-old man named Ethan Walsh was hiking a marked trail with two co-workers. He stopped to tie his boot near a bend and waved them ahead. They walked no more than 30 steps before realizing he was no longer behind them. When they walked back, his pack was leaning against a spruce trunk. His boot prints ended in a small patch of moss with no continuation. One co-worker said, "We didn't hear movement, didn't hear anything at all. Rain did not begin until hours later, meaning the scene had been undisturbed when rangers arrived." Many of the disappearances occur near areas where sudden fogs have been reported. On the 12th of June 2004, a 50-year-old kayaker named Laura Benson carried her boat down a short trail near Two Harbors, Minnesota. A couple walking the same path saw her set the kayak down at the shoreline. They described a thin grey line approaching across the water. By the time they reached the beach, the fog had arrived. Benson was gone. Her kayak sat upright, untouched. A ranger wrote, "Sand around boat smooth, no drag marks." The fog lifted 20 minutes later with no new clues exposed. Hunters and fishermen have also vanished within short distances of others. On the 3rd of November 1988, two brothers hunting near Paradise, Michigan, separated by less than 60 yards. The younger brother, Michael Reeves, said he heard a single snap like a dry twig, then silence. When he called out, there was no response. Search teams found the elder brother's rifle leaning against a fallen log. The ground nearby was firm and layered with pine needles, making prints clear. The trail ended after 6 steps, with no scuff marks showing a turn or sudden movement. Reeves later told deputies it was like he stepped off the trail into nothing. The shoreline around Whitefish Bay contains a long list of quiet missing person files. On the 2nd of August 2010, a tourist named Patricia Holbrook took a short walk from her cabin to look for smooth stones. She was seen by neighbours walking toward a narrow path that leads to the water. Her husband reported her missing after 2 hours. The sheriff's search team found one stone she had picked up earlier, set neatly beside the trail. There were no other signs of her passing. The lake was calm. Fog was not reported that day. Her case file contains only 6 pages. Not all disappearances involve remote forest or high cliffs. Some happen within sight of towns. On the 9th of October 1977, near Salt Sweet, Marie, a 19-year-old named Glenn Morse, was seen jogging along a paved trail beside the river. 2 cyclists passed him going the opposite direction. When they looked back moments later, he was no longer visible. Authorities searched both sides of the trail and the wooded area beyond it. The report notes, ground firm, no disturbance, no entry to water. A ranger working near Grand Marais documented another puzzling case in 2016. A woman named Kendra Ellis, age 43, took a morning walk along a forest loop trail marked with clear signage. Her husband located her initial footprints, then found a section where the prints grew faint, then stopped. The ranger wrote, "No change in soil composition, surface uniform. Weather that day remained consistent and cool. Despite search dogs, ground teams, and aerial support, Ellis was not found." The most repeated detail across many missing person cases is the lack of secondary sign. Search teams expect scuffed soil, broken branches, or drag marks near shorelines when someone falls or becomes disoriented. But in the Triangle region, many cases end with a single print, a single item placed on the ground, or a path that stops cleanly. In ranger school manuals, this is called non-progression, a term used when a person's last known movement cannot be followed by physical evidence. Ranger Lydia Hanford, who worked near Lake Superior in the 1,990 seconds, wrote in her field notes, "These endings don't fit drift, fall, or animal pursuit. They end like someone walked into air." Today, many counties still list these cases as open. Families return each year to the trails, the beaches, and the overlooks where their relatives disappeared. Rangers keep their notes brief. Deputies record their findings in plain language. The pattern forms only when all the cases are placed on the same map: footprints that stop, trails that end abruptly, belongings set down in ways that show no sign of struggle or confusion. The shoreline that doesn't return echoes. Along most lakes, sound behaves in predictable ways. A shout carries across the water. A boat motor echoes off cliffs. Even small noises, footsteps, brush movement, the clatter of stones travel farther over flat surfaces. But across certain sections of the Great Lakes Triangle, rangers, fishermen, hikers, and search teams describe a different experience. They call it dead sound, or missing echo. The reports appear in logbooks as early as the 1930 seconds and continue through the present day. Each note describes the same quiet pattern. Sound that should carry simply does not. One of the earliest known accounts comes from September 1931, recorded by lighthouse keeper Eldon Reeves at the Grand Island East Channel Light. Reeves wrote in his daily log, "Voices did not return from the cliffs tonight. Tried 3 calls, no echo." He repeated the test several times using a handbell mounted near the keeper's shed. He noted that even the bell's sharp ring failed to reflect off the tall sandstone walls across the channel. Reeves marked the entry with the short phrase, "air flat." In 1948, a Coast Guard trainee at Whitefish Point named David Lorne documented a similar experience during a fog drill. His instructor asked the team to use a horn to test the shoreline's reflective sound. Lorne wrote, "Horn absorbed, expected 2-second return, none recorded." The equipment tests that followed showed no malfunction. The instructor wrote in the margin, "environmental," but Lorne added a personal note at the bottom of the page. "Fog thicker than forecast, felt like cloth." Search teams working missing person cases have also commented on unusual silence. During the 1970 disappearance of Donna Hart at Sleeping Bear Dunes, rangers attempted to call her name across the ridgelines. Ranger Paul Steiner reported, "Voices muted, no bounce." He wrote that he could hear his own voice, but the sound did not travel the normal distance. 2 other rangers confirmed that even their whistles seemed to fall short, as if absorbed in a narrow band over the sand. A quieter, but more consistent anomaly appears in accounts from Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore, a region known for steep cliffs and long water corridors. On the 22nd of July 1983, kayakers reported a stretch of shoreline where their paddle taps made no echo at all. One kayaker, Lila Norton, later told rangers the water felt heavy. Sound just sank. Rangers visited the location the next day. One of them, Craig Hilton, wrote, "Confirmed diminished echo response." He did not attempt to explain why the effect occurred only in a specific quarter-mile section. In October 1995, a logging crew working near Munising reported strange audio behavior along a lakeside service road. Crew member Joe Rayner wrote in a workplace incident sheet, "Chainsaw sound died in midair when facing water. Turned away, normal volume." The crew tested the effect repeatedly. When they stood with their backs to the lake, sound travelled normally. When they faced the shoreline, even loud noises seemed muffled. Rayner concluded his note with, "Dead zone?" The company filed no follow-up report. Locals around Whitefish Bay speak about quiet pockets that form without warning. These areas are not tied to fog or storms. One fisherman, Thomas Giroux, described a morning in 2007 when the air felt hollow. He told the Chippewa County Sheriff, "Couldn't hear the gulls, couldn't hear my engine echo off the shore." Giroux said the lake was calm and the sky was clear. His description matches at least 4 earlier reports filed between 1,980 and 2,002 inches the same region. Sound testing by researchers has recorded unusual absorption levels as well. In 2012, a graduate study from Northern Michigan University used portable acoustic sensors near Miners Beach. The team was measuring shoreline echo strength for a project unrelated to disappearances. One student, Erin Malloy, noted that in 2 specific spots, the sensors picked up abrupt drop in echo return index. The report states that these anomalies lasted only minutes before returning to normal patterns. The team attributed the result to unknown atmospheric dampening, though the exact mechanism remained unclear. Another case emerged during a search in 2016 near the Grand Marais forest loop. When teams called out for missing hiker Kendra Ellis, they noted that their voices did not echo off the surrounding trees. A deputy wrote, "Sound dulled, whistle range reduced." Searchers reported that even the radio static sounded quieter in the affected area. When the team moved 300 feet west, sound returned to normal levels. This detail was included at the bottom of the official report without explanation. The lake itself seems to play a role. In August 2020, a boater near Ludington reported hearing a strange drop in ambient noise across the water, not a sound, but the sudden absence of one. He said the waves, normally audible even in light wind, became completely silent. The boater, Henry Coates, radioed in simply because the silence made him uneasy. His log reads, "Waves visible, not heard." The audio returned less than a minute later. One of the most unusual shoreline silence incidents occurred on the 29th of June 1981 at Chapel Rock, where hikers reported hearing a dull thud that repeated every few seconds. Rangers visited the spot and recorded the sound using a field microphone. When they analysed the audio later, the microphone captured nothing but normal wind. Ranger Bev McAllister wrote, "Sound perceived by ear, but not recorded by device." Her report ends with, "Source unclear." Researchers have proposed several explanations for these acoustic anomalies. Some suggest temperature inversions that trap sound. Others point to the sandstone cliff's porous structure, which can absorb certain frequencies. But many reports describe the effect occurring on calm days, on open water, or inside dense forest, where typical inversion behavior does not apply. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, the most consistent detail is the sense that sound disappears into the air instead of returning. Fishermen, hikers, lighthouse keepers, and ranger teams describe the same brief, localized silence. They write their notes plainly, without interpretation. When placed on a map, the quiet pockets fall inside the same triangle drawn by missing ships, lost hikers, and broken radio signals. The shoreline does not always return echoes. Sometimes, the sound does not come back at all. The maps that don't match. When most people look at a map of the Great Lakes, they see fixed shorelines, stable depths, and clear navigation routes. But inside the boundary now called the Great Lakes Triangle, charts do not always agree with one another. Depth readings shift, buoy coordinates change by small but persistent margins. Survey lines from different decades overlap imperfectly. Crews who rely on these charts say the inconsistencies are subtle, never dramatic enough to draw national attention, yet consistent enough to create a quiet pattern. Most of these details sit in technical notes written by survey teams, Coast Guard officers, port authorities, and hydrographic researchers. One of the earliest hints appears in a 1924 hydrographic survey conducted along the southern part of Lake Superior. The team, led by surveyor Edwin Larin, recorded several depth readings that did not match earlier measurements taken only 4 years before. In the margin of his notebook, Larin wrote, "Shelf extends farther north than 1,920 chart shows." He returned to the same location 2 days later and received a different reading, one closer to the earlier chart. Larin labelled the discrepancy as instrument deviation, though no instrument defect was documented in his report. These notes remained archived in the US Lake Survey Office for decades without further review. Buoys present another recurring issue. In 1957, the Coast Guard log at Frankfurt Station recorded that buoy 3W, which marks a shallow approach lane, was found 110 feet off its documented coordinate. The crew repositioned it. 6 days later, another team found it displaced again, this time by 94 feet. The lake was calm that week, and no storms had passed through the area. The log simply reads, "Buoy drift unexplained, anchor intact." The entry was marked routine and filed away, but an internal summary created in the 1,970 seconds notes 5 similar buoy shifts along the eastern side of Lake Michigan over a 12-year span. Mapping inconsistencies extend to shoreline measurements as well. In 1963, a geological survey near Osable Point showed that a particular cliff edge had shifted inland by almost 8 feet since the previous recorded measurement. When researchers returned in 1964 to confirm the shift, they found the cliff consistent with the older measurement instead. One researcher, Thomas Rowley, wrote, "Possible transcription error," though his notebook notes that the rock face showed fresh fractures consistent with recent movement. The official report omitted these observations. By the 1,980 seconds, electronic depth soundings were common in navigation. In 1982, a commercial shipping captain named Merle Quincy reported depth readings in Lake Huron that fluctuated sharply along a straight course. Quincy wrote, "Depth changed from 210 to 184 to 213 within 0.3 of a mile." He recalibrated his equipment twice, but the readings remained irregular. When the Coast Guard checked the area days later, their equipment recorded stable depths. Quincy's incident was added to a brief file labelled Transient Sounding Variations. Survey errors could explain isolated incidents, but inside the Triangle region, mismatches reappear every decade. In 1993, a US Geological Survey team, led by Dr. Helen Paxton, attempted to reconcile shoreline erosion charts from the 1,950 seconds through the 1,990 seconds. Paxton wrote, "Whitefish Bay shoreline shows inconsistent erosion calendar. Certain sections shift forward and back across decades in ways not supported by sediment history." She noted that one particular cove appeared 20 feet inland, on a 1,974 chart, then returned to its earlier position on a 1,981 chart. Paxton added, "Records disagree more here than any other section of mapped lakeshore." In 2001, a Michigan Department of Natural Resources team recorded an anomaly near Chapel Cove. When they placed GPS markers along the cliff line, two of the devices drifted on the digital map, even though the units remained physically still. Technician Liam Rocha documented, GPS indicates 3-meter eastward shift while unit not moved. He repeated the test 3 times with the same result. When he returned the next morning, the GPS held steady, showing the correct location. Rocha noted the event as temporary geospatial offset. Sonar maps reveal similar inconsistencies. In 2010, a maritime archaeology group, scanning for shipwrecks off the coast of Munising, discovered that 2 sections of the lakebed appeared slightly different than the official depth charts displayed. The lead technician, Maya Hill, compared the team's sonar images to archive charts from 1987, 1994, and 2003. Each chart showed minor but noticeable variations in the same area, changes in slope angle, basin depth, and ridge position. Hill wrote, "Shifts small but consistent, not erosion related." Her report ended with the note, "Area may require resurvey." Even commercial fishermen have noticed map inconsistencies. In 2018, a crew operating near Ludington reported that a commonly used underwater rise mapped for decades did not appear on their sonar during a late summer run. They thought the equipment had malfunctioned, but when they checked it the next day, the rise reappeared, matching the chart exactly. The captain, James Kilmer, wrote in his log, "Feature absent, then present. No instrument issue." 2 other fishing crews later reported similar experiences with small underwater ridges in the same region. Some researchers believe these mismatches are the result of outdated charts combined with normal geological changes. Others note that the anomalies cluster inside the same region where ships vanish, hikers disappear, and radio signals drop. In 2015, a retired Coast Guard surveyor named Mark Halloway reviewed old hydrological records for a personal research project. He told a local paper, "Most of the strange data comes from 3 points: the Superior Shelf, the Michigan Basin, and the Huron Corridor. Same triangle, every time." Halloway avoided speculation, but he underlined several survey lines that overlapped poorly, even after accounting for known corrections. The most recent public note came in 2022, when an updated NOAA chart of Lake Michigan showed minor adjustments to depth readings near 2 shipping lanes. NOAA attributed the changes to improved equipment. However, an internal footnote in the revision states, "Historical inconsistencies observed. Cross-reference with 1,978 1,991 charts recommended." The footnote does not explain which inconsistencies required cross-checking. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, the map mismatches do not point to a single cause. They occur quietly, spread across decades, without attracting broad attention. Depths do not always agree. Shorelines do not always align. Buoys drift without drifting. GPS holds steady one day and shifts the next. The discrepancies are small, but they form a pattern visible only when the maps are placed side by side. The names that keep returning, when reviewing the archives of the Great Lakes Triangle, old ranger logs, county reports, shoreline journals, and Coast Guard files patterns emerge slowly. One of the quietest involves names. Certain surnames appear more than once across decades. Some first names repeat in cases that share nearly identical circumstances. These repetitions are not dramatic, but they stand out to researchers who spend years comparing disappearance records. The names do not appear in the same families, and most of the people involved had no connection to earlier cases. The pattern is subtle, forming only when a century of files is laid out in sequence. One of the earliest recurring names is Rainey. In 1907, schoolteacher Martha Rainey vanished near O'Train after walking down to collect driftwood. The sheriff's report lists her as Rainey M. 53 years later, in 1960, a fisherman named Daniel Rainey, with no listed relation, disappeared along the southern shores of Lake Michigan near Benton Township. His boat was found drifting with the engine idling. The entry in the recovery report reads, "Rainey, no debris. Hatch open." The 2 cases occurred in different states and involved different circumstances, yet the disappearance pattern was similar: quiet conditions and no secondary sign of distress. Another recurring name is Wallace. In 1954, Hunter Peter Wallace vanished near Newbury after leaving a clear trail of boot prints that ended abruptly. In 1989, a hiker named Lydia Wallace disappeared near Miners Beach. Her tracks recorded by rangers as solid, then faint, then absent. No relation was found between the two. The ranger who wrote Lydia's report, Marlon Hager, added an unusual note. Case resembles 1,954 Wallace disappearance. He did not explain how he knew about the earlier case, as it had not been part of his assigned district. The surname Ellis also appears more than once. In 2016, Kendra Ellis vanished during a morning walk near Grand Marais, her footprints ending without continuation. But this was not the first Ellis recorded in the region. In 1942, a freighter watchman named Samuel Ellis was lost during a routine patrol along the deck of the SS Bannockburn, a ship that had already gained a reputation for unusual events before it sank. Crew logs describe him as having stepped behind a lifeboat for shelter from wind. He did not return. The captain wrote, "Ellis last seen port side mid-deck. No witness to fall. Even in storm conditions, a fall would have left marks or clothing caught on railings. None were found." First names repeat as well, often in cases with very similar details. The name Raymond appears in 2 shoreline disappearances. In 1999, Raymond Haskins vanished at Pictured Rocks after walking a well-marked trail. In 1939, a trapper named Raymond Cartwright disappeared near the same cliffs. Cartwright's case includes a ranger note, "Last sighting near ledge, no secondary trace." The wording nearly matches the 1,999 report written 60 years later. The name Donna appears twice in cases involving sudden absence on sand ridges. Donna Hart, who vanished in 1970 near Sleeping Bear Dunes, left only approach prints with no return path. In 1984, Donna Melrose disappeared during a jog near Empire Bluff, roughly 10 miles from Hart's last known location. Her tracks were described as continuous, then missing. Deputies noted no wind strong enough to erase footprints that evening. The 2 Donnas had no shared history, no shared relatives, and lived in different counties. Researchers at Northern Michigan University performed a review in 2008 to determine whether these name repetitions were coincidences or part of a statistical pattern. Led by Dr. Clark Mendon, the study compared disappearance names from the Great Lakes region to national missing person databases. Mendon wrote, "Certain surnames show elevated repeat frequency within confined geographic band, not statistically large, but statistically persistent." He avoided drawing conclusions, noting only that the names repeated in cases where physical evidence also showed unusual non-progression. Another recurring detail involves repetition of full names across different decades. In 1978, private pilot Charles Merriman vanished over Lake Michigan after sending a half-cut radio transmission. His last recorded words in the tower transcript are, "over thee." In 1921, a lighthouse assistant named Charles M. Reardon vanished while climbing the exterior stairs of the Marquette Harbor Light during a fog event. The keeper on duty, Isaac Thorne, wrote, "Charles M. missing from stairs. Coat left on landing." The 2 men share only a first name and an initial, but archivists note that both vanished during atmospheric conditions involving low visibility. One of the strangest repetitions involves the name Glenn. In 1977, Glenn Morse vanished while jogging near Sault Ste. Marie. His case was considered unique due to the paved trail and the number of witnesses, yet in 2002, along the northern shore of Lake Huron, a kayaker named Glenn Morrison disappeared in calm weather. His kayak was found upright, paddle across the seat, personal effects undisturbed. A Coast Guard officer reviewing the case wrote, "Roughly matches 1,977 Morse profile. 2 Glens, 25 years apart, both lost under conditions described as stable." Families of the missing often point out these name echoes when filing later requests for information. In one such letter, dated 2019, a woman searching for her lost brother wrote to Chippewa County authorities, "We found another case with his name. Same area, same walking route. It feels wrong to ignore it." The department responded with the standard explanation. Cases are treated individually, and similarities do not indicate connection. Despite this, many investigators quietly acknowledge that the recurring names create a sense of patterns, repeating themselves inside the same geographic boundary. A retired ranger named Harold Dixon, who worked near Whitefish Bay from the 1,970 seconds through the 1,990 seconds, once told a local paper, "Certain names come back around. You remember them, because the cases feel like copies of older ones. Same first step, same last step. The names themselves do not point to a cause. They do not connect families. They do not share timelines. They simply reappear, tied to the same narrow region where maps shift, echoes fail, compasses drift, and footprints stop cleanly on solid ground. The records speak quietly, the names repeat quietly, and the pattern grows clearer the longer the files remain open. The water that rises without wind. Across most lakes, water follows simple rules. Wind creates waves. Pressure shifts create surges. Boats disturb the surface. But inside the Great Lakes Triangle, crews have reported another kind of movement, sudden lifts of the water, silent pulses, and short-lived swells that do not match wind direction, weather forecasts, or barometric readings. These events are rarely dramatic. They last seconds or minutes, then fade. Most are recorded in small margins of logbooks or short statements on incident forms. When placed together, they describe water that behaves in ways that do not fit the conditions around it. One of the earliest documented events occurred on the 9th of May 1903, near Whitefish Bay. A fishing crew working close to the shoreline described seeing the lake rise in a smooth sheet about 12 inches before settling again. The crew member who filed the report, Jonas Kett, wrote, "Surface lifted, not waved. Nearby boats reported no movement. The air that day was calm and the sky clear." A short note in the local newspaper simply stated, "Fishermen confused by lake behaviour." Another quiet entry appears in June 1920, kept by lighthouse keeper Sadie Rowan at the Marquette Harbour Light. She wrote, "Waterline rose against the rocks without wind, 2 inches above morning mark. Fell within minutes." Her entry did not trigger any investigation, but later lighthouse keepers referenced her log when similar events occurred along the same stretch of shoreline. In 1946, the freighter SS Homestead recorded a sudden plateau swell while crossing Lake Michigan. Third mate Harold Byrne wrote in the ship's log, "Level of lake rose at least a foot across visible radius, no waveform, uniform." The event lasted only a short time. The captain ordered the crew to check ballast levels in case of shifting internal weight, but the measurements were unchanged. Byrne noted, "Sea calm, no wind, no wake from other vessels." The log marks the event as transient surface lift. A similar pattern appears in a 1958 report from Ludington. A Coast Guard training boat encountered what the crew described as a still water surge that pushed the vessel upward without rocking it. The operator, Terry Mull, wrote, "Boat elevated slightly, as if on swell, no horizontal motion." Mull said the water smoothed out immediately afterward, leaving the lake flat again. The report was filed under Environmental Anomalies, No Action. In 1977, a University of Michigan research team studying sediment layers near Grand Island recorded a sudden rise in their depth sensors. Lead researcher Stephen Langer wrote, "Water column increased by 0.7 meters, then returned to baseline." He added that the lake's surface remained visually unchanged even as the instruments registered the lift. Langer repeated the readings 3 times, but the rise occurred only once. He labeled it a localized vertical shift without apparent cause. Events recorded by small boats show the same silent pulsing behavior. On the 4th of August 1985, a kayaker named Helen Ortiz reported a flat swell lifting her kayak near Miners Beach. She estimated the movement lasted 3 seconds. The water around her stayed smooth, and there were no other boats in sight. When she reached shore, she told a park volunteer, "It was like the lake breathed beneath me." Her account was written down, but not formally logged. In 1999, 2 fishermen near Two Rivers, Wisconsin, reported what they called a water shiver. The lake surface trembled in a straight line that passed under their boat. The tremor did not create waves, only a narrow ripple that moved faster than wind patterns could explain. One fisherman, Russell Dyke, wrote, "Line of movement visible, but did not disperse sideways." He sketched its path in his notebook. The event was not tied to passing ships or underwater equipment. One of the more detailed accounts comes from July 2010, when a Coast Guard patrol off the Manitou Islands recorded a sudden rise detected by their high-precision depth gauge. The log reads, "Surface lifted 0.4 meters for approx 15 seconds. No incoming boat wake." The crew visually confirmed that the water appeared to rise briefly, forming a soft, rounded elevation before settling back into place. The report adds, "Atmospheric pressure unchanged, wind negligible." In 2014, a group of campers along Pukasqua National Park documented a lake advance in still conditions. Around 4:20 a.m., the shoreline water reached several feet above its normal night position, then retreated within minutes. One camper, Evan Ward, wrote, "Water rose silently. No storm, no current. The tide patterns on Lake Superior do not behave like ocean tides, making such movements difficult to classify." Ward added, "Sand remained undisturbed afterward." Researchers studying these movements often consider seiches, which are standing waves created by pressure or wind, but the movements inside the Great Lakes Triangle don't follow seiche rules. They occur during stable pressure conditions, long after any wind event, and sometimes on days when the water is unusually calm. In 2018, a study performed by Lila Brennan of Michigan Tech attempted to match recorded lifts to known pressure shifts. She wrote, "Majority of events do not coincide with wind-generated seiche cycles. Some appear isolated and highly localized." Another unexplained water behavior involves what crews call still water drift. On the 12th of September 2020, a research canoe team measuring surface temperature near Grand Marais felt their craft drift sideways without visible current. One of the researchers, Colin Meister, wrote, "Water moved beneath us while surface appeared flat. The canoe shifted about 18 feet before coming to rest. The team observed no wind, no boat wakes, and no shifts in temperature." Meister called the event subsurface slide. Local residents have their own quiet terms for these movements. Fishermen in Whitefish Bay sometimes refer to them as soft lifts. Kayakers call them ghost swells. One lighthouse volunteer near Munising said, "It's the lake adjusting itself. None of the explanations are official. They are simply the words people use for water that moves without visible cause." Across the triangle, these movements do not point to storms or geological activity. They do not match underwater landslides or shipwrecks. The events happen briefly, fade quickly, and appear in logs only as small notes. But when the events are placed together across decades, the same pattern emerges: water rising without wind, surfaces lifting without waves, and silent pulses moving through the lakes in straight lines. The air that goes quiet. People expect the wind near large lakes. Even on calm days, breezes usually move along the shoreline, slip between trees, or drift across open fields. But inside the Great Lakes Triangle, rangers, lighthouse keepers, fishermen, and hikers have documented stretches of air that do not behave as expected. They describe sudden stillness, abrupt temperature stalls, and pockets of quiet that settle over the land without warning. These moments rarely last long, but they repeat across decades and locations. Taken alone, each account looks like a simple weather note. Placed together, they form a pattern of air that stops moving when it should not. One of the earliest reports appears in 1898, written by lighthouse keeper Miriam Hayes at the Rock Harbour Light. She noted, "Wind ceased mid-gust, flags dropped as if cut. The log continues, air thick but not warm, silence throughout station. The stillness lasted roughly 90 seconds before a normal breeze returned." Hayes included a short afterthought: "Birds did not call." Modern researchers often highlight this detail because many later reports mention the same silence from wildlife. In 1926, a survey team working near Whitefish Bay recorded an air stall during routine measurements. Surveyor Luke Harmon wrote, "Tape line fluttered, then froze still." His assistant tested wind direction using a thin paper strip. The paper hung straight down and did not sway, even though the lake's surface showed small ripples. Harmon wrote, "Wind visible on water, but absent on land." The stillness ended 6 minutes later. A more detailed account comes from July 1944, when Park Ranger Lyle Bowman was patrolling the forest near Miners Castle. He wrote in his log, "Wind present in treetops, none at ground." Bowman described the still air as heavy, adding that even his own footsteps felt muffled. A chipmunk ran across the trail, but Bowman wrote that he could not hear its movement. Minutes later, a breeze returned with no transition. He ended the entry with, "Unusual pocket, no weather change noted." Sailors on Lake Huron have noticed these moments as well. In 1959, the crew of a small charter boat passing near Georgian Bay reported a sudden calm that pushed over the vessel like a dome. The captain, Richard Moore, wrote in the ship's book, "Wind strong, then cut instantly. The water remained choppy, but the air fell silent." Moore described the sensation as stepping into another room. The calm lasted about 15 seconds. In 1971, a research group from Michigan State University studying evaporation rates near Pukasqua National Park recorded a drop in measured wind speed from 8 miles per hour to 0 within 2 seconds. Their instrument remained at 0 for the next 3 minutes, despite open exposure to the lake. The report by Dr. Sandra Kell states, no correlating temperature shift, no pressure drop, air immobile. Kell included a handwritten note, team felt static charge, though no storm present. One of the most cited accounts occurred on the 3rd of October 1987 along the shoreline near Two Harbors, Minnesota. A couple hiking the trail reported that the wind stopped mid-step. The husband, Daniel Riggs, wrote in a statement, felt a soft pressure in ears, like climbing elevation. The couple stood still for nearly a minute before the breeze returned. Rangers checking weather records found no reason for a sudden atmospheric pause. Another ranger, Kevin Holt, working at Sleeping Bear Dunes in 1992, documented a still air pocket forming over a viewing platform, crowded with visitors. Holt wrote, wind vanished for entire overlook, guests noticed. Several people commented that the air felt thick, and one said it felt like stepping inside a closed room. The stillness lasted under a minute. Holt later included the note, air pocket perimeter visible through shifting leaves beyond platform. Temperature stalls also appear in many logs. In 2006, a ranger at Chapel Rock, Andrew Winslow, recorded a sudden halt in temperature changes at sunset. His portable thermometer froze at 64 degrees Fahrenheit for almost 5 minutes, despite rapidly cooling conditions. Winslow wrote, lake cooling, air cooling, but reading held constant. When the temperature resumed its drop, it did so in one sharp step, falling 3 degrees at once. One of the most unusual entries comes from a Coast Guard patrol in 2013 off the coast of Manistique. The crew felt a quiet bubble descend over the boat. Noise from the water softened and the wind stopped completely. The log entry by Petty Officer J. McCallan states, engine noise unchanged but felt distant. Air around vessel unmoving. A minute later, the boat exited the pocket and sound returned sharply. In land-based reports, hikers often describe these pockets as moments when the world seems muted. A 2018 account from a family hiking the Logslide Trail near the dunes states, wind strong one moment, then nothing. Grass and sand froze in place. A park volunteer who reviewed the report wrote, matches earlier notes of short-duration stillness. Some cases appeared during active searches. During the 2016 search for Kendra Ellis, deputies noted a stretch of forest where wind failed to move leaves. A deputy wrote, air dead, no movement in canopy. The search dog showed hesitation in the same zone, according to the handler's report, though this behavior was not investigated further. Researchers studying these reports suggest several possible explanations. Some point to thermal inversions, which can temporarily suppress wind. Others mention shoreline geometry, where cliffs or forests block gusts. But these explanations do not fully account for the suddenness, the short boundaries of stillness, or the repeated appearance of wildlife silence. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, air stalls follow a familiar pattern: sharp stops, suspended movement, muted sounds, and abrupt returns. The pockets are brief, but they repeat across decades, locations, and weather conditions. The air goes quiet, the silence holds, and then the wind begins again as if nothing happened. The crashes that never touch the water. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, people have reported strange falling events for more than a century: lights that descend toward the water, booms that suggest an impact, streaks that look like aircraft in distress. Yet when search teams arrive, they find no debris, no oil slicks, no broken ice, and no physical sign that anything touched the lake at all. These reports remain small entries scattered across lighthouse logs, Coast Guard files, sheriff dispatch notes, and brief statements from fishermen. They never resolve into full investigations, but they repeat often enough to form their own quiet pattern. One of the earliest accounts dates to the 13th of November 1905, recorded by the crew of the SS Daniel J. Morrell near Whitefish Bay. A deckhand, Arthur Sloan, reported a descending torchlight shape falling toward the lake during a snow squall. The crew expected to hear an impact, but the lake remained silent. Sloan later said the light faded before touching water, though the distance made it hard to judge. The captain logged the event only as unconfirmed falling light. In 1938, lighthouse keeper Harold Kemp at Owl Sable Point wrote of a red streak dropping vertically. He described it as slow, like an ember sinking. Kemp noted, no splash, no sound. He scanned the lake with binoculars, but reported that the object vanished before reaching the surface. His log includes a short line in the margin, seen twice this month. During World War II, several pilots training over the Great Lakes filed brief notes about flash drops or falling flares that were not part of scheduled exercises. On the 22nd of July 1944, Pilot George Redding reported seeing a bright white streak fall straight down toward Lake Michigan. He expected to witness a flare hit the surface, but the light vanished at a low altitude. Redding wrote, "Fade out approx. 100 feet above water." Training logs confirm that no flares were deployed in that area that day. The report was archived without comment. A more public incident occurred on the 3rd of May 1952, when residents near Muskegon called the sheriff's office to report what they believed was a plane going down. Witnesses described a fireball as bright as lightning descending behind the horizon line. One woman, Evelyn Straub, said, "I waited for the sound, but nothing came. The Civil Air Patrol launched a search at dawn. They found calm water, no debris, and no missing aircraft in the region. The official report reads, possible meteor, no confirmed impact." In 1969, a freighter named the Burton Hale radioed that it had observed a dark shape falling rapidly during fog conditions near the central basin of Lake Huron. The first mate, Clifford Ames, said the object looked metallic but lost form in the fog. The crew listened for a splash and heard none. Coast Guard Station Alpena logged the call and sent a patrol boat, which found no disturbance on the surface. Ames later remarked, "Sound carried strangely that night, hard to judge distance." An unusual case emerged in 1978 when 3 fishermen near Manistique witnessed a glowing arc fall toward the lake. One of the men, Richard Lang, said the arc looked like a burning curve. The men marked the direction and distance and reported it immediately. A Coast Guard helicopter flew over the area but found nothing. The helicopter crew noted, "Surface calm, no debris field." Lang wrote in his statement, "We all saw the fall, should have heard a splash." On the 21st of March 1986, residents of a small community near Two Harbors reported a long, low boom that rattled windows. Many believed an aircraft had crashed offshore. Deputies and Coast Guard crews searched the area. Weather was clear, visibility excellent. The sheriff's report states, "Loud boom, no source located." FAA data showed no missing flights that night. When interviewed the next day, a resident named Owen Fields said, "It sounded close, but the lake stayed still." One of the more mysterious cases took place on the 5th of October 1997, when the crew of a charter boat near Grand Marais observed what they thought was a low-altitude aircraft descending rapidly. The captain, Eric Duval, said the craft had a red tail glow. Passengers pointed towards the sky, expecting impact. The object dimmed mid-fall, then disappeared. A Coast Guard response team arrived within an hour and found no turbulence or debris. Duval's log ends with, "Descending object did not reach water." In 2010, hikers on Pictured Rock's Chapel Basin Trail reported a white flare dropping behind the cliffs. The hikers, Bryn and Alan Meadows, emphasized that the light did not arc like a meteor, but fell straight. Rangers conducted a shoreline check, but found nothing. The Rangers' report includes the line, "No light, reflection on water at time of check." A Coast Guard statement from June 2014, filed at Station Street, Ignis, documents a radar technician noting a fast downward return signature that vanished before reaching the surface. Technician Marielle Brooks wrote, "Return dropped from 3,000 feet to approx. 400 feet, then signal ended abruptly." Brooks checked atmospheric conditions and found nothing unusual. Her supervisor added the comment, "Artifacts possible." On the 30th of August 2019, boaters near Ludington saw a spark trail fall toward the lake. One witness, Henry Daly, said it flared, then blinked out. The Coast Guard investigated, but found no oil, foam, or floating wreckage. Daly added, "It looked close, too close to vanish." Researchers studying these reports often reference meteors, atmospheric reflections, or military exercises, but many of the falling events described do not match typical meteor paths. They fall vertically, slow their descent, or disappear before reaching the water. Witnesses consistently expect a splash, a plume, or some physical aftermath. Instead, the lake remains quiet. The surface stays smooth. The objects fail to touch the water at all. Across the Great Lakes Triangle, these falling events add another small piece to the region's unusual record. Lights descend without impact. Booms occur without source. Radar signatures drop and vanish. The crashes never materialize, but the reports continue quiet entries in old logs that describe something falling toward the lake, then disappearing before it arrives. The boats that drift without crews. Throughout the Great Lakes Triangle, some of the most unsettling reports do not involve storms, fog, or strange lights. They involve boats, small fishing vessels, recreational craft, and work skiffs found drifting without their crews, engines running, radios on, tackle boxes open, coffee still warm in a thermos. These cases appear quietly across the decades, filed under missing person or abandoned vessel categories. Yet when read together, they form their own slow pattern. Boats left in perfect working condition, showing no evidence of struggle, grounding, or mechanical failure, and no explanation for where the people went. One of the earliest recorded cases took place on the 4th of September 1913, near Whitefish Bay. A small gill net boat belonging to Harper and Sons Fisheries was found drifting 2 miles offshore. The net lines were neatly coiled on the deck. The single oar was lashed into its bracket. The fisherman who had taken it out, Charles Haight, was not aboard. The logger who filed the report wrote, "Boat stable, gear tidy, no sign of entry or fall." Haight was never found. The boat was returned to the company and used for another 10 years. In 1937, a wooden skiff named Mabeline was discovered floating near pictured rocks, its engine sputtering at idle. A hiking group on the cliffs saw the boat below, moving in slow circles. When the Coast Guard reached it, they found a half-cleaned fish on the cutting board, a bucket of fillets on ice, and an open logbook with a date and time written in pencil. The fisherman, Alfred Dunn, had written, "Weather steady, good catch so far, no further notes." His life jacket remained in its holder, and his hat was hooked on a nail beside the console. The report's final sentence reads, "No clear point of exit." Another case emerged on the 12th of June 1959, when a 16-foot aluminum boat was found drifting near Ludington. The vessel belonged to teacher Raymond Beck, who had gone out for an early morning line troll. When deputies boarded the boat, they found Beck's thermos still warm and 2 coffee cups, one empty, one half full. His tackle box was open on the seat. Footprints on the deck led nowhere else. Deputies checked the water for signs of a fall, but the lake had been calm. Beck's disappearance was classified as a missing person case. The newspaper noted the oddity, but offered no theories. One of the more detailed reports appears in 1968, involving a charter fishing boat called the Holliston off the coast of Manistee. The boat was designed for 2 operators and was found running at a slow cruise speed with no one on board. The family who owned it confirmed that the captain that morning, Earl Osborne, was experienced and had never left a vessel unattended. A Coast Guard team boarded the boat and found Osborne's jacket neatly folded near the wheel, his logbook open to a blank entry line. A sandwich was left half-eaten on a plate. The boarding officer wrote, "Wheels steady, no signs of struggle, no clutter. The boat showed no damage." More recent decades contain even clearer examples. On the 9th of August 1983, a small fiberglass fishing boat was found drifting near Two Harbors, Minnesota. The owner, Jordan Webb, had left at sunrise. At 11:14 a.m., another boater found Webb's vessel moving slowly with the motor still humming. His fishing rod lay across the gunwale with the line trailing in the water. A fresh catch sat in the cooler. Webb's keys were still on the hook beside the console. A nearby couple told deputies, "We heard nothing. Water was calm. No footprints on the wet deck suggested a slip." In 1997, a rescue team discovered a canoe adrift near Grand Marais. The paddle was secured inside the canoe. A waterproof bag containing lunch and a camera was wedged under the seat, untouched. The owner, Evan Pierce, had left a note in his cabin log saying, "Going out for morning photos, back by noon." When the canoe was found, noon had passed by 20 minutes. Deputies searched the shoreline, finding no marks on sand or rock. The canoe's interior was dry. One of the most puzzling cases took place in 2011, when a 20-foot pleasure craft was discovered drifting near the Manitou Islands. The boat belonged to Seth Harmon, a 52-year-old angler. His phone was plugged into the charger. A small radio broadcast played quietly. A sandwich in a cooler had been recently unwrapped. Deputies found a book lying open on the seat, its pages dry and uncreased. Harmon's hat sat on the console. The lake that day was calm, with mild wind and clear skies. Investigators concluded, unknown cause, no evidence of entry into water. In 2016, kayakers near Munising found a small motorized skiff with the engine off, but the key in the ignition. The boat's only operator, Frank Jensen, kept his gear tidy. Inside the skiff, rangers found his gloves folded neatly and placed on the seat, alongside binoculars that showed no damage. Jensen's tackle was still clipped in place. The rangers were unable to locate any marks indicating a fall or accident. Jensen never returned to his cabin. Across all these cases, one detail repeats. The boats show no sign of struggle, no torn fabric, no blood, no bent railings, no drag marks in the water. In many incidents, the missing person had just begun preparing a meal cleaning a fish, or casting a line. Rangers and deputies often write that the vessel appears exactly as it would if someone had stepped away for a moment, except no one returns. Some investigators suggest sudden medical events or falls may be responsible, but many of these disappearances occur in calm water with secure boat edges and no signs of slipping. Others propose waves or wakes, yet several events occurred while water was near flat. The quiet conditions recorded in these logs do not match the profile of accidental falls. The empty boats drift, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. They carry the tools, food, and belongings of people who intended to return soon. But the people do not return, and no trace of them is found. The pattern remains one of the clearest inside the Great Lakes Triangle. Vessels in perfect working order, left without crews, moving slowly across the water as if waiting for someone to come back. The cases that repeat themselves. When investigators look at single incidents inside the Great Lakes Triangle, lost boats, vanished hikers, failing radios, sudden fog pockets, the events appear isolated. Each has its own date, its own weather, its own small story. But when these cases are laid side by side across the last century, another pattern begins to form. Certain disappearances echo earlier ones almost exactly. Details recur. Dates overlap. Last actions mirror one another. The cases repeat themselves in ways that feel quiet, deliberate, and strangely consistent across decades of search logs. One of the clearest parallels involves two men who vanished 42 years apart. In 1918, fisherman Charles Haight disappeared from his small gillnet boat near Whitefish Bay. His gear remained organized, his nets coiled, and his oar fastened in its bracket. In 1960, fisherman Daniel Rainey vanished under nearly identical circumstances in the same region. His boat also drifted with its gear arranged neatly. Deputies wrote that the boat showed no evidence of event. Both cases occurred in calm conditions. Both boats were found within a 2-mile radius. Neither man left signs of falling, slipping, or entering the water. Two different men from different eras, performing different tasks, yet both ending the same way, in the same space, with the same absence of evidence. Another repeated pattern involves shoreline trails. In 1939, trapper Raymond Cartwright was last seen walking along the high ledges near pictured rocks. Search teams found his prints ending on solid ground, with no slide marks or broken growth. 60 years later, in 1999, hiker Raymond Haskins walked the same general path and left the same kind of last sign. One clear print, then none. Rangers noted the similarity in their private notes. Both men vanished along the same stretch of cliff. Both were named Raymond. Both had taken the trail during clear weather afternoons. Both left no sign of descent or fall. The Sleeping Bear Dunes region shows its own quiet repetition. In 1970, Donna Hart walked ahead of her friends along a sand ridge and vanished between two lookout points. Her footprints led in one direction but did not return. In 1984, Donna Melrose disappeared while jogging near Empire Bluff, her tracks ending in a similar manner. Two Donnas, 14 years apart, on the same dune corridor. Both trails ended on dry sand. Both cases unfolded on mild evenings with light wind. Rangers later remarked in interviews that the scenes looked nearly copied. Another mirrored set appears in records of boats found adrift with engines running. In 1959, teacher Raymond Beck disappeared while line trolling near Ludington. Deputies found his boat circling slowly with coffee still warm. In 2011, angler Seth Harmon vanished under the same conditions. His boat drifted with food unwrapped, a book open, and radio playing. The weather in both cases was described as calm and steady. Both men left no signs of entering the water, and both vessels showed no damage. When a retired deputy reviewed the Harmon file, he wrote in the margin, "Resembles Beck incident, 1959. Some patterns repeat on specific dates. On the 23rd of June 1950, Northwest Orient Flight 2501 disappeared over Lake Michigan, witnesses reporting a flash and then silence. On the 23rd of June 1953, exactly 3 years later, pilot Jerome Tefelsky vanished along a nearly identical flight path. His final radio message referenced glare off the water, then nothing. Both disappearances occurred on the same date, both in calm conditions, both inside the same stretch of open lake. Neither left debris substantial enough for identification. Another mirrored case involves weather pockets. In 1944, Ranger Lyle Bowman documented wind present in treetops but absent on the ground along Miners Castle. In 2018, hikers on the same trail reported an abrupt stillness that froze leaves and grass, followed by a sharp return of wind. Both accounts describe identical boundaries, a short stretch of trail where the air stopped moving while trees beyond it continued to sway. The reports are separated by 74 years, yet the observed behavior is the same. Coast Guard radar logs contain their own repetitions. In 1969, a freighter crew near Lake Huron reported a dark, falling shape that faded before reaching the water. In 1997, Captain Eric Duval witnessed a red-tailed object descending rapidly before disappearing mid-fall. Both incidents occurred in clear conditions. Both involved objects that appeared to fall toward the lake, yet never reached it. Both resulted in patrol responses that found nothing on the surface. Even Ranger searches echo earlier ones. During the 2016 search for Kendra Ellis, deputies noted that her footprints ended without progression, matching the 1,954 Wallace disappearance. They wrote that the soil was firm, dry, and capable of showing prints, clearly a detail mirrored exactly in the Wallace report. Two unrelated people, 62 years apart, leaving the same abrupt ending on two separate forest trails. When these patterns are arranged chronologically, the parallels become increasingly clear. A case from the early 1900s matches one from the 1,960 seconds. A disappearance from the 1,950 seconds mirrors one from the 2,010 seconds. Footprints vanish in the same way, at the same places. Boats drift with the same untouched belongings. Lights fall in the same silent arcs. Dates match. Locations repeat. Details echo one another with almost quiet precision. No official agency has released a statement linking these events. Reports remain categorized under accidental drowning, missing person, lost vessel, or unknown cause. But those who study the Great Lakes Triangle for years at a time, historians, archivists, retired rangers, Coast Guard veterans, often talk about these mirrored cases privately. A former ranger named Harold Dixon, who worked Whitefish Bay for over 2 decades, said in a 1998 interview, "You start to recognize the pattern. Same stories, different names, same trails, different seasons, same endings." The Great Lakes do not offer explanations. They never have. They provide quiet water, steady horizons, sudden fog, stalled air, missing echoes, vanishing signals, and boats that return without their crews. And when the files of the last century are placed side by side, the cases fit together in ways that suggest the lake does not just take, it repeats. The same paths, the same dates, the same patterns, again and again, across 100 years of calm water. The Great Lakes Triangle does not offer answers. It leaves patterns, echoes that repeat from one decade to the next, written in the margins of old reports and the quiet details left behind on empty boats and empty trails. If you want us to continue exploring hidden regions, forgotten cases, and unexplained patterns just like this, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who knows these lakes or has always wondered about them. And if there is another region or mystery you want examined, leave your suggestion in the comments. Your ideas guide what we investigate next.